Maine was a pivotal frontier during the Salem Witch Trials, deeply intertwined with the panic through its refugees, ongoing warfare, and key figures who traveled between the two regions. At the time of the 1692 trials, Maine was part of the Massachusetts colony and was engulfed in brutal conflicts, including King Philip's War and King William's War, which pitted English settlers against French and indigenous forces. Historians suggest that the trauma, fear, and economic stress from this perilous frontier directly fueled the crisis in Salem. Even the royal governor of Massachusetts, Sir William Phips, was born in Maine and actually left the witch trial proceedings in the hands of his deputy governor to return to Maine to fight on the frontier. Welcome to Salem Witch Trials Daily. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
Hi, I'm Sarah Japp. Several central figures in the Salem Witch Trials had profound ties to the village of Falmouth, located at Casco Bay in Maine, which is now the city of Portland.
So let's talk about some of these people who lived at Falmouth before the Salem Witch Trials. Let's begin with George Burroughs. He was accused of being the ringleader of the witches. He was, of course, a minister in real life, but in the witch trials, he was accused of being a conjurer who was above the rank of a witch.
He was a minister who had been serving in Maine in the 1670s. Then he was the minister in Salem Village from 1680 to 1683, and back to Falmouth again in 1683 to 1689.
He survived multiple French and Wabanaki attacks on Falmouth and moved to Wells to be the minister there just months before the fort at Falmouth fell, Fort Loyal, in 1690. Yeah, another person I want to talk about who's actually kind of connected to George Burroughs is Mercy Lewis, who was his servant for a time in Maine, in Falmouth. She was born about 1673 in Falmouth at Casco Bay in Maine. And her grandfather, George Lewis, and grandmother, Anna Wards Lewis, they had migrated from England to Maine in the mid-1640s. And so they had lived there on the frontier for decades. But on August 11th, 1676, Falmouth was attacked by the French and Wabanaki forces. Mercy Lewis's grandfather and grandmother were killed. 2 of her uncles were killed, 2 aunts were captured, and many of her cousins were killed or captured. While Mercy and her parents and siblings managed to escape to Mr. Andrews's island in Casco Bay, and from there they made it down to Massachusetts, where they settled temporarily in Salem. On September 21st, 1689, there was another attack by French and Wabanaki forces. And this time, Mercy Lewis's parents are believed to have been killed because they're not found in records after this date. But she managed to escape at that time and found safety with others at Fort Loyal, the fort that protected Falmouth. But then in 1690, in the spring, Fort Loyal was attacked again by the Wabanaki and French forces. And this time, Mercy Lewis's uncle, Thomas Cloyce, was killed. Now, Cloyce is a name you'll remember because of Sarah Cloyce. This Thomas was the brother-in-law of Sarah Cloyce. His brother was Peter, who was married to Sarah Town, Sarah Cloyce. And Thomas was married to Susanna Lewis, who was Mercy Lewis's father's sister. So she may have stayed with them in Falmouth after her parents were killed before she relocated down to the Salem area once again. But this is showing that Mercy Lewis's aunt, Susanna, was Sarah Cloyce's sister-in-law. So she had a connection to the Town family.
This is quite a story. I know it sounds like this date, this attack happened. This date, this attack happened. They moved here. They moved there. That was like her upbringing. She was experiencing her loved ones dying in these wars. That is a lot of trauma.
Especially as a 3-year-old child being a part of that attack. And then once again, as a teenager, actually twice as a teenager, witnessing attacks. Very, very traumatic. And
then during 1682, whose household was she in?
In 1692, she was working for Sergeant Thomas Putnam and Ann Putnam Sr. So she was living in the same house as Ann Putnam Jr. And the two Ann Putnams and Mercy Lewis were all afflicted at the same time. So they actually put Mercy Lewis out for a while to a cousin's house, a cousin of Thomas Putnam's house. Another person who lived in Falmouth before Salem Witch Trials was Abigail Hobbs, who was one of the confessors who actually said that she had signed the Devil's Book. So Abigail Hobbs, a little about her. She was a teenager from Topsfield. She was about 15 years old when she was arrested. The warrant was issued April 18th, 1692, and she was arrested the next day and examined by magistrates Hathorne and Corwin. And she said to them, "I will speak the truth. I have seen sights and been scared. I have been very wicked. I hope I shall be better, and God will keep me." During this examination, she revealed that she had been living at Casco Bay 4 years earlier, and she had met the devil there at the Eastward, which was another name for Maine, because if you look at a map, it's actually more east than north of Massachusetts. And so the devil came to her at the Eastward. He came as a man, but she also said that there were dogs that day that came with her in the woods. She's very much associated with the woods. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along, but she said that the devil said he would give her fine things if she became a witch. And she claimed that she did indeed make a covenant with them. But in 1692, as I said, she's about 15 years old. So 4 years earlier, she's 11 or so, and she's making a deal with the devil in the woods. And presumably her parents aren't around, and she's just an 11-year-old in the woods, which kind of sounds like my childhood in the 80s. But she had also seen a strange cat at her home in Falmouth, and the cat offered her a book and told her to sign, which she did, because when a cat offers you a book, you sign it. Everybody knows that.
I was thinking about Mercy Short's book, how a cat was guarding that book as well.
Oh, yes, the unexpected cat that blocked them from seeing the second book of death.
Yeah.
Which nobody ever followed up on, apparently.
So scary.
But this cat came with a book and she signed it. Another thing, some things like men came and wanted her to sign their book too. And she made a deal with them that she would serve them for 2 years. So she's making all these deals for 4 years, for 2 years, for 6 years, whatever it is. She's served the devil since she's a child, and now she's a teenager. She admitted that she was supposed to hurt Mercy Lewis and Ann Putnam Jr. now in 1692. But interestingly, she said that she didn't go to afflict in her spirit, but that the devil went with her consent, which meant that she's saying that the devil appeared in her likeness, which was part of a big debate at the time. It was if the devil could appear in your likeness, but she did give consent. So, people believed that if you gave your consent, then the devil could take your likeness. But if you did not give your consent, maybe or maybe not, depending who you talk to.
Well, I appreciate that she had him do her bidding and not the other way around.
Exactly. So witnesses testified that Abigail was bad to her father, William, and her stepmother, Deliverance, who they were both also arrested, and her stepmother confessed to witchcraft too. But Abigail also bragged about making a pact with the devil. At one time, she was talking about baptism with a friend, and her stepmother was there. And Abigail threw water in her stepmother's face and said, "You're baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost." She also was said to spend nights lying out in the woods, which was a peculiar behavior for a teenage girl in 1692 when there were wild things living out in the woods, animals. She once threatened to raise the dead. And she talked about Old Nick or Old Cratton like he was her friend. An interesting connection that we'll get into some more another day. John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin have a connection to the fall of Falmouth.